Two figures entangled in sheets, lips pressed together in a moment both intimate and eternal. Their embrace is not theatrical, not posed for glory but raw, private, almost stolen from the night. This is no myth, no allegory. It is simply two women lost in each other, painted with such tenderness that even today, the canvas feels like it is breathing. This is In Bed, the Kiss. At first glance, the painting shocks, not because of its sensuality but because of its honesty. Paris in the 1890s was alive with decadence, spectacle, and vice, but rarely had love between women been captured with such directness, such lack of disguise. Toulouse-Lautrec, the painter of cabarets and shadows, stripped away the performance. Here he showed something private, something sacred. Imagine the artist at work in Montmartre, in the dim light of his studio. His body was frail, twisted by childhood injury, but his hand was steady, precise, driven by obsession. He had spent countless nights among courtesans, singers, and dancers, not as a customer but as a witness, a confidant. He saw their fatigue behind painted smiles, their longing behind laughter. And in this moment he chose not to paint spectacle but truth. The canvas whispers of tenderness. Pale, muted tones dominate, soft creams, faded reds, the gentle warmth of flesh against linen. Toulouse-Lautrec was a master of lithography in line, and here his brush carries the same graphic clarity, outlines that are bold yet sensitive, colors that are simple yet evocative. The room itself fades into insignificance, swallowed by shadows, leaving only the curve of shoulders, the meeting of lips, the intimacy of breath. But beneath the intimacy lies defiance. In a society that objectified women relentlessly, this painting dared to show them not as ornaments, but as lovers, autonomous, desiring, alive. Their embrace was a quiet rebellion against the gaze of men, a fleeting freedom within a world that rarely allowed it. The symbolism is subtle yet profound. The bed becomes sanctuary, the sheets a cocoon protecting them from judgment. The softness of their forms contrasts with the darkness around them, as if love itself glows in defiance of the night. And the kiss, gentle, unhurried, becomes more than affection. It becomes declaration. Historically, Paris at this time was intoxicated with duality, the glamour of the Moulin Rouge against the poverty of the streets, the glitter of aristocrats against the suffering of workers. Toulouse-Lautrec lived between these worlds. He painted not just the performance of pleasure, but the humanity hidden within it. His In Bed, the Kiss was never meant for the grand salons. It was too intimate, too raw, too unpolished for the guardians of high art. But it survived, whispered about, studied, cherished, because it captured something that transcended scandal. Reception was complicated. To some, it was vulgar, even indecent, another decadent indulgence of a crippled bohemian. To others, it was revolutionary, a glimpse of love unmediated by myth or convention. Today it feels startlingly modern. In its quiet honesty, it speaks more loudly than grand epics. Love is love, fragile and unguarded, tender and human. And yet, the painting is also haunted by melancholy. Toulouse-Lautrec himself never knew such intimacy. His life was one of longing and detachment, of observing others but remaining apart. Perhaps this is why the painting aches, because it is not only their kiss we see, but his yearning for closeness he could never hold. Stand before it and listen. The silence is heavy, broken only by the imagined rhythm of two hearts beating beneath linen. The kiss lingers, timeless, unbroken, forever suspended in the space between longing and fulfillment. It is more than a painting. It is a confession, a prayer, a fragile flame in the dark. And as long as eyes fall upon it, in bed, the kiss will whisper of love's defiance, of tenderness against the world's indifference, of a moment too human to ever fade. A swirl of skirts, a flash of legs, a blur of bodies locked in rhythm. Smoke coils in the air, mingling with laughter, perfume, and the faint bitterness of absinthe. The room glows with oil lamps, shadows sliding across red velvet walls. And in the center of it all, two dancers spinning, collapsing into the music of Montmartre. This is at the Moulin Rouge, the dance, Toulouse-Lautrec's vision of Paris at its most electric, its most fragile. But this is not glamour. Look closer. The figures are exaggerated, distorted. The woman's face flushed and tired, the man's body stiff, mechanical, almost grotesque. They dance not out of joy but out of compulsion. The Moulin Rouge, the very heart of Parisian nightlife, was both paradise and prison. Toulouse-Lautrec knew it well. Night after night, he sat in corners, sketchbook in hand, capturing everything. The grandeur, the exhaustion, the performance of ecstasy hiding the weight of survival. He painted this scene in 1890, at the height of his obsession with Montmartre. By then he was both celebrated and ridiculed. The little man with the sharp eye, the painter of dancers and drunks, a cripple who revealed the beauty and brutality of the night. His physical pain never left him, but in the chaos of the cabaret, he found a mirror for his own fractured existence. The painting vibrates with energy. Lautrec's brushstrokes are quick, decisive, capturing not detail but movement, the blur of skirts, the rhythm of steps, the pulse of music. The colors are bold and acidic, yellows, reds and greens clashing like the sound of a brass band. The space is tilted, unsteady, as if the entire room is swaying with intoxication. You don't just see the dance. You feel it. You are inside it, overwhelmed by its fever. Yet beneath the chaos, a quiet sadness lurks. The dancers are anonymous, swallowed by the crowd. Their intimacy is an illusion, their joy a performance. Toulouse-Lautrec saw through the spectacle. He knew that once the music stopped, they would return to loneliness, to hunger, to the weight of bodies aching from endless nights on stage. The Moulin Rouge was theater, but it was also survival. The social context is vital. Paris was exploding with modernity, its nightlife both a symbol of freedom and a symptom of decay. Respectable society condemned the cabaret, yet could not resist its pull. Lautrec stood at the threshold, too broken to belong to the aristocracy, too sharp-eyed to be lost in the crowd. He made the Moulin Rouge his kingdom, its dancers his muses, its smoke-filled halls his cathedral. Symbolism burns within the scene. The dizzying spin of the dancers echoes the dizzying spin of the city itself, always moving, never resting. The distorted proportions of the figures reflect not drunkenness, but the distortion of human lives consumed by entertainment. Even the tilted perspective hints at collapse, at the instability beneath the glitter. When it first appeared, the painting unsettled viewers. It was not flattering. It was not polished. It was too real, too raw. Some dismissed it as caricature, others as mere decadence. But over time, critics realized what Lautrec had captured, not just a dance but an era. The Moulin Rouge was more than a cabaret, it was Paris itself, spinning at the edge of glory and ruin. Stand before the painting now and the music seems to rise again. You can almost hear the accordion wheezing, the floorboards creaking, the crowd shouting for more. But listen longer and you'll hear something else. The exhaustion in the dancer's breath, the loneliness hidden in her forced smile, the echo of a world dancing furiously to forget its own despair. Toulouse-Lautrec leaves us with a paradox. The painting is alive, joyous, fevered, yet beneath it all lies a haunting truth. The dance cannot last forever. The music will end. And when it does, only silence remains. She sits like an empress in shadow, her body draped in pale silk, her eyes heavy with a dangerous knowledge. Around her, men lean close, intoxicated, enthralled, but she does not see them. Or rather, she consumes them with her gaze before discarding them into nothingness. This is Messalina, Toulouse-Lautrec's vision of Rome's most infamous courtesan, painted not as history remembers her, but as the artist's own fevered dream. Who was Messalina? Wife of the Emperor Claudius, she was remembered by chroniclers as a woman of insatiable appetite, a seductress who moved between power and ruin with terrifying ease. For centuries she became a symbol of corruption, lust and betrayal. Toulouse-Lautrec, a man who lived in the smoky underworld of Paris, found in her story a reflection of the women he knew, dancers, prostitutes, muses, survivors. It was the 1890s when Lautrec turned to this subject. His health was failing, alcohol and disease gnawed at his body, and his nights at Montmartre had stripped away illusions. He no longer painted only what he saw but what haunted him. In Messalina he found a mirror of decadence, of pleasure and destruction entangled. She was not just a Roman figure, she was Montmartre itself, dressed in ancient robes. The painting vibrates with Lautrec's signature energy. His brush strokes are restless, jagged, almost violent. Flesh is not soft, but sharp, every line hinting at hunger and tension. Colors clash, the pale white of her gown against deep crimson shadows, the dim glow of lamplight mixing with darkness. Lautrec does not aim for beauty, he aims for truth even when truth is grotesque. Notice how she holds herself. Her body is languid, but her face is tense, commanding. The men around her blur into the background, anonymous, powerless. She dominates the canvas, a queen of ruin. This was Lautrec's obsession. Women who ruled through presence, who bore the weight of society's judgment yet never surrendered their power. In Paris at the time, such imagery was shocking. Respectable art clung to ideals of morality, yet Lautrec dared to place vice and desire at the center of the frame. Messalina was not just about ancient Rome, it was a commentary on modern Paris. The Moulin Rouge, the brothels, the endless parade of men seeking pleasure and forgetting themselves, all of it echoes in her gaze. The symbolism is layered. Her pale dress, flowing and delicate, suggests innocence, but wrapped around her body, it becomes a mask concealing hunger. The faceless men at her side become shadows of society itself, men who condemn women publicly but pursue them in secret. And Messalina herself? She becomes the eternal figure of desire, dangerous, condemned, but unforgettable. When Lautrec unveiled such works, the reaction was divided. Some critics saw genius, a painter stripping away pretense, revealing the undercurrents of power and lust. Others dismissed it as vulgar, obscene. But Lautrec did not care. He was not painting for approval. He was painting because he could not stop. Messalina was not just his subject, she was his confession. Stand before the painting today and her eyes still burn. They pierce through centuries, through canvas, through you. They ask a question with no easy answer. Do you judge her or do you recognize her? Is she villain or victim? Muse or mirror? Lautrec leaves us with no resolution. Only the haunting vision of a woman who lives forever in contradiction. Worshipped and despised, powerless and omnipotent, real and imagined. She is Rome, she is Paris, she is every city that hides its vices in velvet. And in her silence you can hear Lautrec's own whisper, beauty is never innocent. Desire is never simple. Power always leaves scars. The scene is almost theatrical. A woman, pale and commanding, sits enthroned in decadence. On either side of her, two extras, shadows of men, anonymous, forgettable. They lean in, one with hunger, one with reverence, but she does not move. She does not need to. Her presence devours the room. This is Messalina between two extras, Toulouse-Lautrec's chilling portrait of power, desire, and ruin. Messalina, the Roman empress remembered for her insatiable appetite, had already haunted Lautrec's imagination. But here he stages her not as a figure of history, but as an actress in a modern cabaret, half Rome, half Montmartre. She is theater and truth at once. For Lautrec, who lived among dancers, prostitutes, and performers, this vision blurred the lines between antiquity and Parisian nightlife. Messalina was not just a woman of the past. She was eternal. The painting was created in the mid-1890s, when Lautrec's health and spirit were in decline. Alcohol, syphilis, and insomnia left him frail, yet his imagination burned brighter than ever. In this work, his brush strikes not with elegance but with desperation. The paint is raw, thick, almost clawed onto the canvas. The figures feel unstable, vibrating with unease. It is not harmony he seeks, it is truth. Look closely at the composition. Messalina dominates the center, her gown spilling like ivory flames, her body rigid yet sensual. Her face is pale, mask-like, cold as marble. Around her, the two men are reduced to caricatures, blurred outlines of greed and lust. They are not characters but symbols, the extras of her drama. She alone has weight, she alone commands the eye. The color palette intensifies the tension. Stark whites clash with deep, suffocating reds. Shadows coil around her, swallowing the men into insignificance. The background fades into obscurity as if the world itself dissolves. All that remains is Messalina, queen, predator, myth. But Lautrec is not only painting a Roman scandal. He is holding a mirror to his own world. The brothels of Paris, the backstage corridors of Montmartre, the women who wielded both power and pain, all of them live in this canvas. He knew them, he loved them, he suffered with them. And in Messalina, he crystallized their paradox. Women worshipped for beauty, condemned for desire, remembered only through the eyes of men. The symbolism here cuts deep. The extras around her are not merely attendants, they are society itself. They represent men who exploit, consume, and vanish, leaving the woman at the center to bear the weight of history. Her stillness, her cold gaze, her isolation in the painting suggest more than power. They suggest loneliness, the cost of being eternal. When Messalina, between two extras, was first shown, it unsettled viewers. Some dismissed it as grotesque, unfinished, even vulgar. But others saw what Lautrec had captured. Not just a woman but an atmosphere, a truth about power and decadence that polite society wanted to ignore. In her silence, in her detachment, Messalina reveals a haunting reality, that desire is never free and power is never pure. Stand before her today and you feel her eyes upon you. She does not smile. She does not invite. She commands. The men beside her are forgotten, swallowed into shadow, but she remains. Not a lover, not a victim, not even a queen, but a symbol of eternity twisted by human hunger. And so Lautrec leaves us with a final image. A woman enthroned between ghosts, her beauty immortal yet her humanity denied. She is Messalina, Rome's empress, Montmartre's shadow, and Lautrec's eternal muse of ruin. An examination at the Faculty of Medicine, Paris, a story. The cold, sterile air of the amphitheater is pierced by whispers and the rustle of papers. Chairs creak, footsteps echo, and a hush descends upon the room as if the very walls were holding their breath. This is not a theater, nor a stage of frivolity. This is the Faculty of Medicine in Paris, 1887, and the human body has become both subject and spectacle. Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, the chronicler of Parisian life, turns his gaze from cabarets and salons to the solemn rigor of scientific inquiry, capturing a moment that is at once clinical and profoundly human. An examination at the Faculty of Medicine, Paris. At first glance, the scene appears precise, almost documentary. Students cluster around the dissecting table, faces pale with anticipation or horror. The professor, stooped over the cadaver, gestures with authority, his hands both instruments and guides. Light filters through tall windows, slicing across the room in hard beams, illuminating skin, metal, and curiosity. Toulouse-Lautrec's eyes, keen, compassionate, unflinching, see beyond anatomy. He sees the tension of youth confronted with mortality, the silent moral questioning that pulses in every heartbeat. Toulouse-Lautrec painted this scene during a time when Paris was a city of contrasts. The Belle Époque flourished outside these walls, full of music, laughter, and decadence, while within the halls of medicine, the scientific revolution reshaped understanding of life and death. The artist's fascination with human behavior, whether in the dance halls of Montmartre or the lecture rooms of Paris, drove him to explore this juxtaposition. He was not merely illustrating anatomy. He was revealing the human psyche under pressure, the collision of intellect, fear, and curiosity. Imagine Toulouse-Lautrec at work. He positions his easel at a corner of the amphitheater, sketches quickly, deliberately, capturing the angles of bodies hunched in concentration, the arch of a hand, the tilt of a head. His brush moves in confident, sweeping strokes, layering colors that are earthy yet alive, ochres, muted reds, cool grays. He contrasts the sterile white of the lab coats with the raw flesh of the subject, creating a tension between life and death, learning and loss. Each detail, the glint of a scalpel, the nervous clench of a fist, the ripple of light across a student's forehead, is deliberate, a narrative frozen in oil. But there is obsession in this painting as well. Toulouse-Lautrec, known for chronicling the vitality of nightlife, immerses himself here in a different kind of intensity. He watches the human body not for entertainment but for truth. Every shadow hints at mortality, every expression carries a story. The scene is more than an examination. It is an exploration of the human condition, the confrontation with knowledge, the tension of morality, the fragility of life itself. Symbolism permeates the work. The cadaver, central and silent, embodies the ultimate inevitability, a reminder that knowledge comes at a price. Students, clustered yet isolated, represent the duality of learning, the thirst for understanding tempered by ethical weight. The cold light that illuminates their faces, stark and unforgiving, becomes a metaphor for revelation itself. Sometimes harsh, sometimes illuminating, always transformative. Toulouse-Lautrec's hand transforms the scientific process into a meditation on life, curiosity, and mortality. When the painting was first exhibited, it provoked discomfort as much as admiration. Audiences accustomed to Toulouse-Lautrec's cabaret scenes were confronted with mortality, ethics, and the quiet heroism of study. Critics debated whether the work belonged in art galleries or scientific halls. Yet its legacy is undeniable. Today, an examination at the Faculty of Medicine, Paris is recognized not just as a depiction of a lecture room but as a profound commentary on humanity, its quest for knowledge, its confrontation with death, and its capacity for both empathy and detachment. Step closer and you will feel the weight of the moment. The silence is nearly audible, broken only by the soft scratching of pens and the breathing of the students. The painting invites reflection on the fragility of life, the pursuit of understanding, and the moral responsibility that accompanies knowledge. Toulouse-Lautrec captures not a single story but a universal truth. Learning and mortality are inseparable, and the human spirit confronts both with awe, fear, and curiosity. In the end, the painting lingers in memory like the scent of antiseptic and candle wax, the quiet shuffle of papers, the flicker of light across the room. It reminds us that art can witness, can probe, can illuminate even the most uncomfortable truths. An examination at the Faculty of Medicine, Paris is not merely a study of anatomy, it is a study of the human soul, forever suspended between curiosity and reverence, between life and the inevitability of death.